Today I thought I'd talk about a couple of different quilting styles that you can use, or basic quilting techniques that you can use. I've been quilting for about 7 years now, but the first thing I learned to do was to stitch in the ditch. And with a busy quilt like this, that is an especially good idea. You don't want to add to the busyness, generally speaking, of this quilt. I mean, there's a lot going on here. We've got a ton of color. We got a ton of different shapes. We've got diamonds and stripes. It's all, this is a friendship braid. It's not a quilt technically, it is a table runner, but quilting in the, or stitching in the ditch is a real easy and absolutely called for methodology in terms of quilting this. So what I would do to do that in this instance is to put on my walking foot on my machine, and I'm just going to probably start in the center and stitch in the ditch for all these center squares here. Like every single one of them, I'm going to go across here and here and here and here, and then all the way around the square. Not necessarily in that order, but in the order that makes it easiest for me to do on my machine. And then I'm going to work out from there, because there does tend to be a little bit of creep, a little bit of movement, no matter how well you've pinned or anything else when you are quilting a project. Smaller projects are easier to manage, obviously. Bigger ones, not so much. So for this project, stitch in the ditch, awesome option. Also, awesome option for anyone that's relatively new to this. Again, that's the first thing I learned to do. Now, I have another runner that I did over the weekend. And this one, you can see, a bit bigger, not quite as busy. I mean, it's a little loud. I'll give it that. Sorry about that. Let's get that straightened out. It's a bit loud, but I had just this little charm pack of squares left over from Christmas, and I wanted to just sort of, I just was inspired one day to throw this together, so that's exactly what I did. I just threw this together on point, stitched it up, found a backing, threw it on there. So these are both, I'm gonna, in January, finish Christmas stuff and then put it away in my formal closet. But this particular one, instead of, you could stitch in the ditch, you could totally do that for this particular piece. However, what you could also do, and what I plan to do, is I'm going to use my embroidery machine to quilt this. And I will show that next, but essentially, and there are some things that you do have to consider. One of them is if you have a different bottom thread than your top thread, you do have to kind of tweak your machine so that it doesn't pull the top thread all the way through to the bottom on your embroidery machine, because that's what it has a tendency to do, or vice versa. So you do have to watch that. But if you're using the same color thread on the top and the bottom, it doesn't make as big of a difference. You don't have to really worry about your tension quite so much. But I'm going to load up a Christmas, I'm sure I've got several Christmas tree or Christmas-like motifs for embroidery. I'm going to load that up, and then what I do is map this out. I'll just map it off in squares, and I will put a design in each of those squares so that it looks like a continuous quilting all the way across. And then when I finish that, I will do my binding. In this case, I'm going to pull the backing up and use that as my binding on here. That's also a quick and easy way of doing it. But anyway, those are a couple of different options that you have. Obviously, the embroidery option is going to be a little bit more involved. It takes just a little bit more time and effort. But truthfully, with this other busy quilt, I think this is probably going to take me an equal amount of time and effort, just because I have so many ditches in which to stitch on this little friendship braid table runner. So we will go to the sewing machine next, and I'll show you the setup.